Victorian Football League began as a relatively obscure and minor series of contests between a handful of renegade clubs. But within 2 or 3 decades it had emerged as one of the world's great sporting competitions. With its own heroes, and villains. The history of the VFL coincides neatly with the history of the motion picture in Australia. And the chances were that whenever the most important game of the season was being played, the motion picture camera was on hand to record it.
It's a grand game, our Aussie game, the best game of all. Up they go, they're flying so high. Watch the kicking straight as a die. It is football at its wonderful best.
To an outsider, a crowd of around 80,000 assembled to watch the final of an interclub competition on a Saturday afternoon, as was the case in 1939, seems astonishing. But Melburnians have always had a passion for the game of football, particularly at the top level since the VFL was formed in October of 1896. Only a month later, the first motion pictures were recorded in Melbourne by a visiting agent for the French Lumiere Company. The subject? Melbourne's spring racing carnival, including the running of the famous Melbourne Cup. Here we see the bustle of passengers arriving at Flemington Station on Cup Day, Tuesday, November the 3rd, 1896. The bulletin remarked, "It is something beautifully appropriate that the first Australian picture presented by the new machine should be a horse race." The writer added, of course it had to be either that or a football match. Our earliest surviving film of a VFL game is the grand final of 1909 between Carlton and South Melbourne. Here's part of the crowd of more than 36,000 patiently awaiting the arrival of the teams. No pre-game extravaganza here. See the bloke wearing the dark suit standing alongside the goalpost? It's not a security officer or a club official, it's actually the goal umpire. Carlton was led onto the field by its captain coach Fred Pompey Elliott. Behind him are Fred Jinks with the moustache and cap, Frank Silver Kane, so named for his prematurely grey hair, and Mally Johnson, the league's top ruckman. They did not know it at the time, but all three were about to play their last game for Carlton. This trio of stars, and several other players, all left the club after a dispute at the start of the 1910 season. In 1909, players were still responsible for providing their own gear, so team uniforms are anything but uniform. Some players wear the original lace-up jerkin style, others the new monogrammed Guernsey. One player wears a simple navy blue jumper with no monogram at all. The player to the left is Norman Hackenschmidt Clark, already famous for winning the 1899 Stawell Gift. Leading South onto the field is Charlie Ricketts. Like Elliott, he was captain coach, and both were in their first year as coaches, a rare phenomenon for grand final sides. The South Melbourne Guernsey features a red sash, although there seems to have been no consensus as to which way it should be worn. The tall player is ruckman Albert Franks, something of a wild and woolly character, who got into plenty of scrapes both before and after this match, and was once suspended indefinitely for abusing an umpire outside a tribunal hearing. Maybe we shouldn't be too hard on him though. The umpire was a former Collingwood player. The player wearing the faded knickerbockers is Len Mother Mortimer, the team's star full forward. This straggling southerner, still doing up his fly as he runs onto the ground, appears to have been a victim of pre-match nerves. The final system in place in 1909 had given South a second chance after both teams won elimination semi-finals, and Carlton defeated South in what became a preliminary final. Fortunately for South, the new unrestricted right of challenge meant that as minor premiers they could challenge for the flag. Here is one of the many ruck duels between Carlton's Mally Johnson and South's Albert Franks. The umpire is the famed Jack Elder, who officiated at all 4 finals in 1909. Here's Carlton's Harvey Kelly, an ex-South Melbourne player, using a place kick to shoot at goal, unsuccessfully. Slow motion highlights handball 1909 style, something that even the Adelaide Crows wouldn't get away with today. Carlton's full forward George Topping kicks a point early in the game. Silver Kane sends the ball downfield. Kane, a master of the torpedo punt, was one of the longest kicks in football. South backman Grimshaw is injured in the first quarter. There were no reserve players at this time, so injured players had to be just about out on their feet before they were allowed off. To leave the field meant giving the opposition a significant numerical advantage. In a low-scoring encounter, both sides ended the first quarter locked on 5 points. Scores were still level at half-time, 2 goals, 9 each. Here's Carlton captain Elliott again. Elliott replaced legendary coach Jack Worrell after internal brawling earlier in the season. Worrell had coached the Blues to victory in 3 successive grand finals, but despite the unrest, Elliott took the Blues to their 4th grand final in as many seasons. Carlton also suffered injuries to Martin Gotts and Jack Backey during the course of the game. This was one of them. The stand we're looking at is the precursor of the southern stand, completed in 1939. At this stage, the best available view was enjoyed by those spectators brave, or stupid enough, to climb elm trees in front of the stand, although the members seem to be having a pretty good time of it as well. The Carlton team poses for a photo, an unusual occurrence at half-time, although the clean shorts suggest that this may have been taken before the game commenced. Carlton's leading full forward George Topping is second from the left. Kane is at the rear, Elliott with hands on hips, and Jinks to his right. The third quarter was South Melbourne's best. Kicking to the Jollymont end, it added 2 goals 3 in this term, while restricting the Blues to 1 goal 2. Melbourne's fickle spring weather also took a turn for the worse during the third quarter. It made scoring even more difficult and reduced visibility for spectators and the cameraman as well. Although the overall image quality is remarkably good for a film of this vintage. Very few films made in Australia before 1910 survive, and not many of these are complete. This film, in fact, is one of the longest pre-1910 Australian films still in existence. The game was close all day. Carlton was a red-hot favourite to take out its fourth successive flag, but South outran the Blues using a fast, open game plan and avoiding the packs wherever possible. The tactics seemed to work. South led by 7 points at the last change, and despite kicking no goals in the final quarter, hung on to win by a mere 2 points, 4-14 to 4-12. Carlton peppered the goals, but Harvey Kelly registered their only major for the quarter. The result was a huge shock for the football public, and excited South fans streamed onto the ground after the game. The win was a triumph for the generalship of Ricketts, opposed to the tallest, heaviest and most skillful team in the competition. He was ably supported by Bill Sunner Thomas in defence and Franks on the ball. This was South Melbourne's first flag. They won again in 1918 and their final flag as South in 1933. Winners, as they say, are grinners. Melbourne, 1910, heading north aboard a cable tram towards Prince's Bridge and the newly completed Flinders Street station with its distinctive dome. With a population of around 600,000, pre-war Melbourne was a prosperous town. Just on the left, near the ice cart, is the site of Buxton's Art Gallery, where 6 rebel VFA teams staged a breakaway meeting in October 1896, from which the new 8-team Victorian Football League was born. By 1910, increased recreation time and activities and an improved lifestyle were becoming available for a wider spectrum of urban dwellers. Picnics were always a pleasant diversion, and one of the most favoured sites was only 4 miles from Melbourne's GPO, along a then unpolluted part of the Yarra. Studley Park in Kew, where you could spend a restful Sunday afternoon boating or just relaxing under the gum trees. For Melburnians, though, sporting events were probably the most popular pastimes, and of these, football matches already reigned supreme. For some Edwardian ladies, the footy was an ideal place to vent their emotion without raising too many eyebrows. These fair barrackers are attending the round 15 fixture between Fitzroy and Collingwood at Victoria Park in August 1910, which resulted in a 12-point win for the home team. Club allegiances were as evident then as they are now. Among the supporters dressed to the nines is this young Collingwood fan already displaying the colours. With no television or radio coverage, fans simply flocked to the VFL grounds for their weekly fix. They could, of course, attend the movies, and just occasionally might get a glimpse of their sporting heroes on the screen. One of those heroes was Percy Wilson, the blonde Collingwood champion rover who later captain-coached Melbourne. Unfortunately for Wilson, he injured his ankle later in this game and had to be taken to hospital. Another to be injured that day was Fitzroy's Arthur Newbound, seen here clutching his ankle after falling awkwardly. Robert Briggs was Fitzroy's leading goal kicker in both 1909 and 1910, and here he is kicking the Maroons' second goal for the match. As the Magpies take a break, note the player on the far left of the screen next to a trainer. It is legendary Collingwood full forward Dick Lee, the Gary Ablett of 1910. To see such legends on the screen today is a huge thrill, just as it would have been for movie patrons back in 1910. Specialist picture houses were increasing in number by this time, and there were few important towns without regular screenings in a local cinema or hall. The advent of permanent cinemas led to the production of regular weekly newsreels. Australia's first local reel, the Pathé Gazette, appeared in November 1910. Pathé, a local branch of the successful French company, was also responsible for producing the first Australian provincial newsreel, the Ballarat Gazette. Typical of Ballarat newsreel items filmed by Pathé was this prize-giving ceremony at the local kennel club, showing owners trying to control their dogs in front of the noisy movie camera, with only limited success. The first weekly issue of the Ballarat Gazette, filmed on Easter Monday 1911, included a football match. Scenes from the annual clash at Ballarat's City Oval between Geelong and Ballarat. The Geelong team may have worn a plain navy top on this occasion to minimise any confusion with the opposition players wearing the vertical stripes. In spite of the poor local result, Geelong won 114-32, the film was very popular. Australians loved looking at themselves on the screen, and if the scenario was a football match, so much the better. The pity is that so little pre-war footage of league teams in action survives. Of Pathé's Melbourne-based pre-war newsreel output, only 2 football segments have so far been located, both featuring Essendon. The first is a round 15 match from 1911 against Geelong at the East Melbourne Cricket Ground. In this season only, Essendon was captained by Dave Smith. Essendon was the first club to introduce numbers on jumpers to help its supporters identify the players, and in the 1911 final series, Smith became the first man to run onto a VFL ground wearing a number. A young supporter waits to deliver an early version of a high five to champion defender Billy Busbridge. Champion Essendon rover Ginger Cameron is preceded onto the field by an enthusiastic dog. Most members of the visiting Geelong team are still wearing the traditional lace-up Guernseys. Bill Eason, Geelong skipper from 1910 to 1913, leads his team out. This is Geelong's great rover George Hines, who would later change his name to Haynes due to anti-German feeling in the war years. This is defender Les Armstrong, a 170 gamer for the Pivotonians, as Geelong was then known. Last out is Geelong's other star rover, Bunny Eason, brother of Bill. In the background of these shots are the residences in Jollymont Street, site of VFL House in the 1970s. It was at this match that Geelong appointed Jim Doyle as its first aid officer after he attended to one of the players who had cut himself on a broken bottle. Doyle was to hold this post for more than 40 years. The boundary umpire signals that the ball is out of play by raising a white handkerchief tied to his wrist, a practice used until the 1950s. Framed by Government House in the background, the central umpire in this game is R.J. Boyle, who officiated in 59 league games between 1907 and 1915. The other surviving football segment from a Pathé newsreel featuring the Essendon team is a fourth round game from 1912, this time opposed to South Melbourne at the Lake Oval. Essendon's captain is Alan Belcher. His brother Vic plays for the South Melbourne side. The two made history later that year by captaining opposing teams in the second semi. Essendon's vice-captain, the versatile Lou Armstrong, whose brother Albert also played with the Dons at this time. Here's Ginger Cameron again. Billy Busbridge, regarded as the best big man of his era and idolised by Essendon fans. This is Jim Bull Martin, whose vigorous style earned him a 12-week suspension on a striking charge in 1911. The police later charged him over the incident, making him, and not Lee Matthews, the first player to be hauled before the courts for an on-field incident. William Stewart, one of Essendon's greatest ever centremen. Another of Essendon's early champions, ruckman defender Fred Baring, who was also a brilliant cricketer, earning national and regular state selection. South still had Charlie Ricketts as its captain coach. As we saw, Ricketts led the 1909 team to a premiership. Following Ricketts is Vic Belcher, the only South team member destined to play in both the 1909 and 1918 premiership teams. Jim Caldwell, a star wingman, who captained that 1918 flag side. Glenn Mortimer is still in the lineup as well, the only South player still wearing the original lace-up Guernsey. And this is a young Mark Tandy, a future captain and 200 gamer with South, considered by Roy Cazaly as the best rover he ever saw. In this passage of play, Essendon are in attack, and one of South Melbourne's best defenders, Jack Scobie, number 19, hits the ball clear of Lou Armstrong, number 2, and Dan Hanley, number 10 of Essendon. Number 18 for South is Bruce Sloss, who was killed in action in 1916. Essendon's number 18 is an equally fine player, elusive half-forward Pat Shea. Essendon scraped home in this match by a goal, and also beat South in the grand final later that season. Other players in this passage include South's number 2, Vic Belcher, and number 20 is ruckman Bill Sunner Thomas. Number 16 for Essendon is Percy Ogden, who formed a deadly roving duo with Cameron. St Kilda's first appearance in a grand final came in 1913, opposed to Fitzroy. This brief clip shows part of the record crowd of 59,479, an advertisement for overcoats, a steal at around 50 shillings or more, and all too brief shots from the game itself. Here, St Kilda star Billy Schmidt recalls the roughhouse tactics Fitzroy employed in this game.
Well, I didn't know till some years afterwards that I had to be stopped. I was playing extra well. And on the bounce of the ball, I got smacked in the jaw from him, a beauty. I didn't recover for a long time. And after half time, when we went out again, I was knocked out again.
Number 26 for Fitzroy is playing coach Percy Parrott. St Kilda's number 1 is skipper Harry Lever, while number 4 for Fitzroy is James Toohey in his first season with the Maroons. The plucky Saints trailed all day, but cut the Roy's lead to a single point in an exciting final quarter before the favourites steadied and held on to win the premiership by 13 points. After this near miss, Saints supporters would have to wait more than 50 years for their team's next grand final appearance. The First World War had a huge impact on league football, as it did on the lives of most Australians. After the declaration of war in August 1914, volunteers rushed to enlist in the Australian Imperial Force. Most fit young men were accepted, though not without some fairly rigorous physical examinations. And some necessary drilling as Australia's youth exchanged its civvies for army uniforms. In all, more than 112,000 Victorians enlisted, including over 80 players from VFL ranks. Games continued to be played during the war years, though with fewer clubs, and to reduced attendances and mounting debts. Newspaper editorials suggested that all sport should be discontinued, and football was especially targeted. Why should men stay at home playing sport, it was argued, while a war was being fought? Australian involvement in the war effort was well captured by intrepid newsreel cameramen, and war items featured prominently in the weekly reels. By this time, Amalgamated Pictures, a local consortium of independent producers, was producing the weekly Australian Gazette. At first, it ran in competition with the Pathé newsreel and eventually absorbed it. One segment from a 1915 newsreel features a match between reigning premiers Carlton and a combined soldiers team. This game was cited as further proof that footballers were doing their bit for the war effort. Former Geelong skipper Billy Orchard captained the soldiers, or camp team as it was called, and they wore Collingwood colours. Carlton regulars Chalice and Burley lined up for the soldiers. Chalice was later killed in France. Note the presence of the VFL steward. Stewards had been introduced by the league in 1912 to help stamp out rough play, but the idea was abandoned after only a few seasons. The Carlton team wore its regular strip. The tall player in the middle of the back row is tough and dashing defender Paddy O'Brien. The thick-set player seated with the ball is their star full forward, Finn Gardner. This exhibition match was played at the MCG on September 25, a week after the grand final, in front of a disappointing crowd of 8,992. £248 were raised to assist the Australian Wounded Soldiers Fund. Number 1, standing in the goal square, is Carlton backman Billy Dick. The camp team led at half-time, but Carlton rallied in the second half and ran out 20-point winners. In the following year, another wartime exhibition match featuring VFL players was staged a little further away, in London, at the Queen's Club, West Kensington, Saturday, 28th of October 1916. The pioneer game between the 3rd Australian Divisional Team and the Australian training units was organised by Lieutenant Frank Beaurepaire and filmed, with obvious bemusement, by British Pathé News. The newsreel intertitle describes it as the Anzac Game, a combination of association and rugby football. A later commentator called it a bewildering exhibition of aerial mayhem. Despite the energetic performances on the field, the enthusiasm of these spectators, and a healthy crowd of 3,000, the Aussie game didn't really catch on in the old country. 1920s, Melbourne was again a city on the move. It had by this time been filmed from one end to the other, and some camera operators were looking for more playful images in their quest to record its character. Most of our surviving football footage from this era derives from newsreel segments, many of them incomplete. The weekly local newsreel was now known as the Australasian Gazette, and much of its material in the 1920s was shot in Melbourne. This Australasian Gazette segment from the 20s, with the intertitle "King Football Will Soon Reign," shows South Melbourne players engaged in a final match practice session before the commencement of the season. This is also one of the few films to provide any more than a fleeting glimpse of a league team's home ground. In this case, the Lake Oval, used by South from 1897 until the last round of 1981, after which time the team moved to Sydney. The bowling rink adjoining the outer wing is evident, but there is no sign of terracing in the outer at this stage. Another early newsreel clip features Melbourne and St Kilda playing out a draw in round 5, 1921 at the Junction Oval. Identifying players of either side in this encounter is difficult, given the similarities in Guernseys and the fact that both teams are wearing dark shorts. The rule of black shorts for home sides and white shorts for visiting sides did not come into practice until 1924. St Kilda had changed its traditional colours of red, white and black in 1915, since they were also those of the dreaded Hun. The Saints' new colours of red, yellow and black corresponded to those of Belgium, a war ally, and acknowledged the patriotism of their teammates who served with the Australian forces in Belgium. Another suggested colour combination of scarlet and khaki was, to the Saints' credit, not greatly encouraged. They returned to their original colours in 1923. Note the field umpire's method of slinging the ball into the turf with one hand, giving the big men little chance of winning a clear tap. Who would want to have been a ruckman in 1921? The newsreel team were back at the Junction Oval in 1923 for a third round encounter between St Kilda and Collingwood. St Kilda was captained in that year by the legendary Dave McNamara in his last season. Following McNamara is football journeyman Aubrey Baldy McKenzie. Other St Kilda players, including defender Cyril Jazzlegs Gambetta, have to make their way past wandering officials. In fact, both teams enter the playing arena via the same race. The bell in the foreground is the precursor of the siren, used to signal the beginning and end of each quarter. Sirens didn't come into use until 1949. Collingwood is led out by Percy Rowe, one of the Magpies' toughest ruckmen, and father of Richmond stalwart Des Rowe, in only his third but final appearance as captain. He is followed out by gifted backman Harry Saunders, the subject of a huge controversy in the previous season when he was both suspended by the league and convicted and fined by the courts for flattening Carlton's Alex Duncan. Ernie Wilson, another rugged and controversial Collingwood defender. Collingwood, and the league's greatest ever goal kicker, Gordon Nuts Coventry. And St Kilda's first and the second ever Brownlow medalist, Colin Watson, also played in this 1923 game. This is an historic coin toss. At 6'4", St Kilda's McNamara was a giant for his era. The greatest place kicker of all time, he was credited with a distance of 93 yards. Had McNamara played for the Saints in 1913, it was claimed he could have made the difference between winning and losing the grand final. Percy Rowe, on the other hand, had been elected captain by his teammates, but resigned the position after this match, claiming the captaincy was affecting his form. In truth, however, his wife had a big say in the decision. She did not like the extra commitments it meant for him at the club. Sadly, only this small portion of the match sequence survives. The white flashes on the image show the beginnings of nitrate decomposition, which means that this film was copied just in time. In terms of final success, the early 20s was the era of the famous Essendon Mosquito fleet, under the coaching of Sid Barker, a former VFA star with North Melbourne. This is Barker, captain coach at the season opener at Windy Hill when the Dons' 1923 premiership flag was unfurled. Although the Dons lost this match to Collingwood, they would go on to another premiership victory after further tinkering by the league with the final system in 1924. Oblivious to the flag-raising ceremony, a young food vendor does brisk business before the game begins. This game featured some spirited ruck duels between Essendon champ Norm Beckton, number 3, and Collingwood's great Sid Coventry, number 8. Essendon's number 30, now in frame, is speedy rover George Shorten, runner-up in the first Brownlow medal, and at 7 stone 6 pounds, possibly the lightest VFL player ever. Another St Kilda-Melbourne contest at St Kilda from the early 20s shows players leaving the arena at half-time. And the re-entry of both teams for the second half. This St Kilda team includes Bill Cubbins, Cyril Gambetta, Colin Watson again, and Horry Mason, one of the best stab kicks of his era. The Melbourne team follows. Neither club enjoyed great on-field success during this period, although Melbourne had improved enough by 1925 to make the finals and win its first flag for 26 years in the following season. The second half action in this game is quite willing, and the cameraman is in good position to record it all, including this free kick to St Kilda's Barney Carr. The newsreel camera operators were obviously drawn to St Kilda-Melbourne clashes. Here's another one from August 1929. By this time, both teams are entering the playing arena by running rather than walking out of the players' race. Remarkably, the film caught the giant ex-South Australian Tiny Mills playing his second and last game for St Kilda. At 6'8", Mills was at that stage easily the tallest man to have played league football, and his appearance caused quite a stir. Ivor Warne-Smith, Melbourne's captain, wins the toss, but St Kilda went on to win the game by 17 points. This round 17 victory was crucial for the Saints, enabling them to sneak into the finals at Melbourne's expense. the Redlegs could not overcome the all-conquering Collingwood team in round 18 and missed the final four by 2 premiership points. The match sequence features a clearing dash by Cyril Gambetta, some general scrambling play in the centre of the ground where baseball diamond markings are prominent. Baseball matches were played as VFL curtain raisers at this time. Billy Moore in his first season with the Saints. And Melbourne's lanky Bob Johnson missing an absolute sitter. Film of other VFL matches prior to 1930 is rare. Apart from what we have already seen, these shots taken at Windy Hill in rounds 2 and 3 of 1929 are among the few that survive. This is our first glimpse, for example, of Footscray in action here at Essendon. Footscray was one of 3 teams added to VFL competition in 1925, along with Hawthorn and North Melbourne. All 3 teams were from the VFA, and despite their imposing records in the association, all took many years to establish themselves as genuinely competitive in league ranks. They were the last Melbourne-based clubs to gain entry to the VFL. Before then, Richmond and University had joined the VFL in 1908, but after a promising beginning, the University club became the league's first casualty, disbanding prior to the start of the 1915 season, having lost its last 51 matches. Richmond, on the other hand, was a top side by the late 20s, regularly appearing in or vying for a place in the finals. The Tigers reached the 1929 grand final by thrashing the previously unbeaten Magpies in a lopsided semi-final and sneaking past Carlton by a goal in the preliminary final. As minor premiers, Collingwood still had another chance at a 3rd successive flag, and the rematch with Richmond was eagerly anticipated. The Collingwood 18 in the 29 grand final was an impressive array of talent, led by Captain Sid Coventry, Vice-Captain Harold Cheswas, Charlie Dibbs, George Claydon, Albert Lauder, passing in front of the camera, Jack Beveridge, Percy Bowyer, Len Murphy, Tubby Edmonds, who kicked 5 goals in this game, Bob Makem, Frank Murphy, defender Westcott, Albert Collier, Harry Rumney, Bill Libbis in the background, Gordon Coventry, Harry Collier and Charlie Ahern. The Tigers, led out by Captain Dooley Lilburn, also boasted a strong lineup, including Perce Bentley, Jack Skinny Titus, Jack Baggett and Maury Hunter. After Sid Coventry won the toss and kicked with the breeze, Collingwood, with 3 changes from its beaten semi-final side, never looked like losing. One of those changes was the addition of the rugged Charlie Ahern for just his 3rd game of senior football. It also proved to be his last. Ahern injured his elbow during the game, it became infected, and he died just over a year later. Jack Titus, appearing in frame now, is number 12 for the Tigers. His opponent is Magpie tough guy George Claydon, number 10. Here, Titus makes position to receive a pass downfield, but cops a cruel bounce. The stray ball is gathered and cleared by number 17 for Collingwood, first rover Bill Libbis. As the Tigers make another forward thrust, the ball falls to the back of the pack, where it is grabbed by Richmond full forward Jack Baggett, number 14. He snaps at goal with an attempted banana kick, clearly no left foot. The Woodsmen seem to have all the answers in defence, as first Albert Collier, number 5, breaks clear and sends a stab pass downfield. Then Charlie Dibbs is paid a disputed mark after rising high. To confirm the Magpie supporters' view on umpires, Collingwood received only 34 free kicks in the game to Richmond's 61, but still cruised to a 29-point win, proving itself one of the greatest teams ever. The Magpies won again in 1930, 4 consecutive premierships, a record still unequalled in league history. Bruce Andrew, part of those teams, recalls just how strong the Magpies were.
They were champions in their own right, but not one of them thought he was better than anybody else because he was just a cog in the Magpie machine. The spirit was fantastic, everybody worked together, and they were mates.
If Collingwood was the champion team of this era, all clubs had their own champions, and it was often these personality players who attracted the paying customers. The VFL was quick to recognise this and looked for opportunities to promote the outstanding exponents of the game wherever possible. Newspaper photographs, cartoons and cigarette cards had long been used for this purpose. And as early as 1929, promotional film of individual VFL personalities was also being produced. This film, from the late silent era, has captured for posterity some of the game's biggest names. This unique record features top players from different clubs during training sessions at their respective home grounds. Unlike today's players, who are exposed to media attention from the time they nominate for the draft, many VFL stars of the 20s and 30s appear unsure how to react to the camera's impassive gaze. Fitzroy's Jack Moriarty crossed to the Maroons from Essendon in 1924 and became one of the league's greatest full forwards. Fitzroy ruckman Cole Niven, a former Maryborough star who would later skipper Melbourne in the 1930s. Cecil Kerr, a handy wingman who played 65 games for the Royals. Charles Chapman, a quality key position player. He captained Fitzroy from 1929 to 1931. Charlie Hardy coached Essendon from 1928 to 1930. Prior to that, Hardy was a champion player at North Melbourne in the VFA before crossing to Essendon at the age of 34. Norm Beckton, Essendon captain in 1929 and 30. A strong, reliable ruckman who played 173 games for the Dons. Jack Fosty, one of the competition's best fullbacks, was to seriously injure his knee in the 1929 season. He later played with a penny taped under his knee bandage to keep his cartilage in place. Keith Forbes, one of the highest goal-scoring rovers of all time, and twice runner-up in the Brownlow Medal. Hugh Gregory, a solid half-back flanker whose brother also played league football for North Melbourne. Gregory was a member of the 1924 Premiership side. Some sprint work for the Dons. Very good for the wind, as the intertitle suggests. Len Johnson, a deadly left-footer who was equal leading goal kicker for Essendon in 1929. Bert Hyde, Hawthorn's leading goal kicker for many years. judging by the accuracy of his first kick, he needed the practice. Hyde was also a pro sprinter of some ability and had a long association with the Hawks. Ted Poole, a 200 gamer for the Hawks and one of the best rovers the club ever had. Originally from Kalgoorlie, he moved to Melbourne on Carlton's invitation, but there was nobody from the Blues to meet him at the station, and he left instead with the Hawthorn boys. Bert Chadwick had already captain-coached Melbourne to the 1926 flag and skippered Victoria in many of his 19 appearances for the state, before taking on the Hawthorn coaching job in an honorary capacity in 1929. Bob Sellers, a handy big fellow from Box Hill, who captained the Hawks for part of 1928 and gave the club splendid service. Barney Carr, a dashing centreman for St Kilda, regular interstate representative and regarded as one of the best players of his era. On the right, Bill Cubbins, possibly the finest full-back of his era, had several stints with the Saints, including this one as captain in 1929 and 30. Horry Mason, an ex-North Hobart wingman and future Saints skipper, and centreman Billy Roberts were both Victorian representatives for St Kilda. Here's the 1929 St Kilda team before a game. Future champion full forward Bill Moore is 7th in this lineup. C. Petchell is actually Jack Petchell, who captained South Melbourne for a short time in 1929. Nicknamed Skipper, Petchell was recruited from Melbourne University as a centre-half forward and follower. Ted Johnson was a top full forward for South and at one stage held the record for most goals in a final. He also played 7 times for Victoria. On the right of this group of players is H.W. Avery, who played 25 games with South before moving to Melbourne in 1931. The short player on the extreme left is Wheelerhan, a wingman who chalked up 51 games for the club between 1926 and 30. This is Austin Robertson, possibly the fastest man to play league football. Footscray, still relative newcomers to the VFL at this stage. Completion of the club's new £22,000 grandstand, under construction in 1929, was behind schedule owing to labour troubles. At times there was only a tarpaulin over the players before and after training, and, according to club records, many suffered colds and consequently failed to strike their best form. Now that's a novel excuse. Arthur Stevens, Footscray's ruckman and captain in 1929. Albie Alton was Footscray's best and fairest winner in 1928 and selected as vice-captain for the 1929 season. Alan Hopkins, one of the Bulldogs' all-time greats, and one of the cleverest and most brilliant centremen in VFL history. Nicknamed Banana Legs, he received a retrospective Brownlow medal in 1989. Vic Sampson played relatively few VFL games, but was a champion ruckman with the Bulldogs, or Tricolours as they were originally known, before they crossed to the VFL in 1925. Alex Eason, former star Geelong and Richmond rover, nicknamed Bunny for being able to run as fast as a rabbit. He was non-playing coach of the Bulldogs in 1929. The versatile Ivor Warne-Smith, the first dual winner of the coveted Brownlow medal. One of the game's all-time stars, Warne-Smith captain-coached Melbourne from 1928 to 1931. He was ahead of his time in the way he could change the direction of play with his handball. Cool and never rattled, he was a superb high mark, a good kick with either foot, and could play equally well in wet or dry conditions. Bert White, a rover who played 67 games for the Demons and was a member of the 1926 Premiership team. Bob Johnson, a left footer who played over 100 games for Melbourne, equally at home in the ruck, defence or attack, if not, as we have seen, the most reliable kick for goal. Bill Timms also played in Melbourne's 1926 Premiership side. A dashing player with a big physique, he developed into one of the best fullbacks in the competition. Dick Taylor was ranked as one of the finest centremen of his era. He played on the wing in the 1926 flag side and was a regular selection for Victorian teams. Bob Corbett missed the 1926 grand final through injury, but otherwise played 161 games for the Demons and represented Victoria in his first year with the club. All these players seem far happier going through their training routines than posing for the camera. Footy fans, on the other hand, with safety in numbers, seem to enjoy their brief flirtation with the camera. They could scarcely have known that many years later a new audience would be gazing at them, just as they peered at the roving lens with that odd mixture of curiosity and scepticism. While player fashions and the game itself have changed immeasurably over the years, crowd support for league football has remained a constant. The die-hard fan in the outer, the devoted club member in the grandstand have provided the VFL with levels of support that other codes could only dream about. The bowler hats and cloth caps may have gone, but the footy followers themselves have stayed. And the mix of patrons hasn't changed a lot either. Men and women, boys and girls, young and old, football appealed to them all. While everyone likes to be on a winner, the true blue supporters have always turned out to watch their teams through the lean times as well as the good. As a result, more often than not, the terraces were packed on match day. The Junction Oval, for example, drew a crowd of 35,000 for the 1929 St Kilda-Melbourne clash we have already seen, including 2,000 fans who got in without paying when part of the outer fence collapsed. What was it about Aussie rules matches that commanded such consistently strong attendances from such diverse sectors of the Melbourne population? It certainly wasn't spectator facilities in the outer, which were primitive to say the least. But each home ground had its own peculiar charms, and attending a league game on a wintry Saturday afternoon was part of Melbourne's social fabric. All suburban grounds were accessible by public transport. Glenferrie Oval, one of the new venues for VFL games in the 1920s, easily reachable by tram or train, or a short walk for the locals. At the ground, the fans peel off to the members section. Or make a beeline for the outer, a safer haven for visiting members. Like most clubs, the Hawks, or Mayblooms as they were known in the 1930s, went through a series of uniform changes. When this film was taken, they had reverted to a brown guernsey with a yellow V. The scoreboard at Glenferrie didn't often convey a lot of joy for Hawthorn supporters during this time. And the noise didn't only come from the crowd at this ground either, one of Melbourne's infamous Red Rattlers, a familiar sight and sound to Glenferrie patrons. But footy fans have always been an intrepid lot, and resourceful. If no halftime entertainment was provided, the supporters, armed only with orange peel or peanut shells, could provide their own, and supporters were equally as adept at throwing insults as orange peel. Their principal target? The men in white, those who get it in the neck. This trio from left of screen, Bob Scott, Bill Blackburn and Alex Much, umpired 11 grand finals, including 7 straight for Scott between 1929 and 1935. Before turning to umpiring, Much also played 144 games with Collingwood, including 2 premierships. Melbourne itself continued to grow in the late 20s, its population passing the 1 million mark by 1931. On the roads, the car has taken over, not a horse in view. Electric trams have replaced the cable trams on most routes. The spires of St Paul's Cathedral are almost complete, as is Melbourne's War Memorial, the Shrine of Remembrance. But for all the outward signs of progress and prosperity, this was the era of the Great Depression. The shrine itself was being built by sustenance labour, and although football games were as popular as ever, many players were reliant on match payments for an income. To escape their economic woes, Melburnians found another sporting hero to embrace at this time, the mighty racehorse Farlap, seen here winning the 1930 Melbourne Cup, carrying 9 stone 12 pound.
Follow the throng along, make life a happy song. Let's take a trip to Melbourne.
Farlap and jockey Jim Pike received a huge ovation on their way back to scale. The following year, Farlap found the task of winning back-to-back cups impossible, with the huge impost of 10 stone 10 pound. The horse finished a gallant 8th. At the cinema, the talkies had also made their mark by this time, and audiences were becoming familiar with the range of sound newsreels as part of their matinee or evening entertainment. 2 of these were locally made, the Cine Sound Review, the Voice of Australia. The first review appeared in November 1931 and continued with weekly regularity as a lively entertainment for generations of moviegoers. It was preceded by an all-Australian edition of Fox Movietone News, which from January 1931 appeared as a complete weekly reel in its own right. The Movietone kookaburras were now an established trademark and, like the Cine Sound kangaroo, were to become something of an institution over the next 40 years. Until the emergence of television in the 1950s, the main coverage of league football on film came via the newsreels. This segment is from the grand final between Geelong and Richmond in 1931, the first year of the Page-McIntyre system of finals, named after the men who recommended it, which remained the format until the introduction of the Final Five in 1972. This was the first meeting of these 2 teams in a grand final. They had finished 1 and 2 on the ladder, and Richmond was a clear winner in their second semi-final meeting, despite the absence of several key players. Life is still no easier for ruckmen at centre bounces in 1931, as umpire Scott crouches and punches the ball hard into the ground, with predictably poor results. Richmond's number 23, centre half forward Gordon Strang, fires at goal using a place kick, but his attempt falls short. In a reversal of their semi-final form, the Tigers struggled all game to kick a winning score against the strong Geelong backline, led by Reg Hickey and George Jocker Todd. Geelong's star rover Tommy Quinn, wearing the number 16 Guernsey, tries a drop kick at goal. Quinn was usually deadly around goals, but not on this occasion, and the ball is cleared by Quinn's opponent, Richmond skipper Maury Hunter, number 20 for the Tigers. Geelong eventually ran out 20-point winners to take out the club's second flag. This newsreel style of filming finals didn't alter much in the following years. 1 to 2 minute segments, same camera position in the members' enclosure, similar crowd shots. The newsreels mainly covered grand finals, but occasionally also took in club games or other finals. In 1932, for example, the Cine Sound Review cameraman recorded these scenes from the second semi between Richmond and Carlton. Richmond was captained in this season by Perce Bentley, one of the truly great players of his era, although his name is just as synonymous with the Blues. This star-studded team also included legendary forward Jack Titus, but was missing its rising young ruckman Jack Dyer through injury. The Carlton team returns to the fray after half-time. One of its first season successes was Ron Cooper, a young Western Australian recruit nicknamed Socks for obvious reasons. At the centre bounce, Carlton's rugged follower Mocker Johnson, number 15, opposed to Bentley, tries to blanket the ball. Clearing the ball is Carlton skipper Colin Martin, number 2, in his last season with the Blues. This game was highlighted by brilliant aerial displays by Richmond's Strang brothers and a match-winning final quarter by the Tigers when they overcame a 2-goal deficit to finish 25-point winners. Here's Cooper, number 19, challenged by Richmond's tough ruckman Fritz Hefner, number 33, as he attempts to clear the pack. Carlton and Richmond were deadly rivals, and these matches were bruising affairs. Despite winning this game, the Tigers went into the rematch 2 weeks later as underdogs, but managed to snatch victory in the dying minutes and secure their third premiership. The Blues were not disgraced in either game. Centre-half back Gordon Mackey, number 24, was one of their best. Back flanker Fred Gilby, number 6, also tried hard, and Johnson, flying here with Richmond's full forward Doug Strang, as usual threw everything into his work. In the following year's finals, however, the dominant Tigers ran into South's famed Foreign Legion, an enviable array of talent which struck form mid-season and won 11 games on end to snare the 1933 flag. For the Bloods, Laurie Nash was impassable at centre-half back, defender Jack Austin equally as good, while Bob Pratt's 3 goals at full forward gave him 109 for the season, just pipping Collingwood's Gordon Coventry for the season's top goal-kicking honour. Perce Bentley again captained the Tigers in 1933. Here he wins a tap-out after a boundary throw-in early in the game. Richmond were missing key players for this final and were under pressure as South Melbourne attacked repeatedly in the first quarter. Richmond's number 18, Tom O'Halloran, repels one of South's advances. Other good players for South included dashing centreman Len Thomas, son of Bill Thomas, who we also saw representing the Bloods in their 1912 match against Essendon. Here Thomas paddles the ball in front of him. Richmond ruckman Bert Foster, number 11, is one of his pursuers. South number 8, Hugh McLaughlin, receives attention from a trainer after colliding with Foster. Another effective South player was Subiaco recruit Brighton Diggins, playing at centre-half forward. Diggins, wearing number 17 and opposed here to Maurice Sheehan, collects the ball and snaps truly, one of his 2 goals for the day. In 1934, Victoria celebrated its 100th year of white settlement. Among the various activities were the Great Centenary Air Race from London to Melbourne, with prize money donated by prominent philanthropist and chocolate manufacturer Sir Macpherson Robertson.
Come along and greet the Duke and see the Melbourne Cup and see the air race finish. Watch the numbers going up. So follow the throng along, make life a happy song.
The race was won by British aviators Scott and Black, who were subsequently paraded through the city streets in an open car.
Let's take a trip to Melbourne. There's lots to do and through. A welcome waits for you. So let's take a trip to Melbourne. There'll be sports galore and there's the Grenadiers band. So
The MCG was also put to use for an impressive display by 30,000 school children for our royal visitor, the Duke of Gloucester, the 3rd son of King George V to visit Australia. Equally impressive was Richmond's display against South Melbourne in the 1934 Grand Final, atoning for its loss the previous year with a convincing 39-point victory. Richmond's pressure was intense all day. In this passage we see why Jack Dyer, number 17 for the Tigers, became known as Captain Blood, as South defender Hugh McLaughlin slips one tackle and just evades a flying Dyer elbow. Here, Dyer contests another boundary throw-in, but the tap goes to a teammate coming over the top before South rover Terry Brain gets a kick away. Richmond's goal-kicking ace was Jack Titus, who booted 4 from 8 marks by half-time and finished with 6 in a match-winning performance. South persevered and did not shirk any issue, like this courageous mark to wingman Herbie Matthews, but they were generally outgunned by the rampant Tigers and faced a 10-goal deficit going into the final quarter. Here's the only known footage of South legend Laurie Nash. kicking goalward in the general direction of Pratt and his opponent Maury Sheehan. Nash follows up with a hefty bump on a Tiger defender and eventually wins the ball back. This passage of play resulted in a violent flare-up, one of several in the final quarter, resulting in 3 reports, but all honours this day were with the Tigers. South Melbourne remained a force in the mid-1930s and played off again in both the 1935 and 36 grand finals, losing both to a revitalised Collingwood side. Here's Albert Lita Collier, winner of the 1929 Brownlow medal and one of the league's toughest and most respected players. The ball is picked up by Albie Panham, who swings around as he is pursued by South Jock Mackenzie. This is Davies of South Melbourne, marking and clearing downfield, while Magpie skipper Harry Collier is in pursuit. Collingwood went on to win the 1935 flag comfortably, but faced a more determined South team in the following year's grand final. Prior to the game, both teams were introduced to the Victorian Governor, Baron Huntingfield. Behind the Governor and Magpie captain is Bob Rush, who played 10 seasons with the Woods in the first decade of the century, and later served as club treasurer for more than 40 years. The 2 skippers, Harry Collier and Jack Bissett, pose with the Governor against a backdrop of the new Southern Stand, still under construction. This is Collingwood's tough ruckman, Jack Cracker Knight, taking a mark. And here is Ron Todd, one of the greatest full forwards of them all, evading a tackle from South's Jim Cleary and kicking goalwards where it is picked up by Albie Panham, who kicked 5 goals in this match. Albie was the 4th in the Panham family dynasty. Here's Todd again, clashing with Jack Graham, a future South captain playing in his first season. The ball spills free to Fonts Kine, who gets out of trouble and boots it forward, where South's great fullback Ron Hillis outmarks Todd. The Collingwood player falling to his knees is Albert Collier, but he still has the presence of mind to get a handball in to a teammate. As the players tussle near the boundary line, Harry Collier appeals for a free kick. At the throw-in, Kine taps the ball to ground, where Panham collects. The marking duels between Bob Pratt and Jack Regan were famous in the 1930s. Here's one of their less celebrated efforts, with Pratt falling over in the contest. The brilliant, if inaccurate, Todd kicks one of his 4 goals from 16 shots. Despite his inaccuracy, the Pies held on to a narrow lead for back-to-back flags. November 1937, Victoria gets a new train. The impressively streamlined Spirit of Progress begins its express service between Spencer Street Station in Melbourne and Albury.
The Spirit of Progress, to run between Melbourne and Albury. The train was drawn by a mighty engine named Edward Henty, after the famous Victorian pioneer, and capable of 80 miles an hour.
Equally impressive was the 1937 grand final contest between Geelong and Collingwood, considered by many to be the best final yet played. In addition, it was seen by a new record crowd, 88,540 fans, some of whom sat 6 deep inside the boundary on the actual playing area. After a period of coaching instability, Reg Hickey had taken over the reins at Geelong in 1936 and had moulded the team into a formidable unit again. Key position player Les Hardiman and his brother Peter, both state reps. Reg Hickey, perhaps the greatest footballing figure in Geelong's history. Star ruckman George Doherty, chief goal kicker Jack Metherill, and long-serving rover Tommy Quinn. The reigning premiers had also had another fine year. Harry Collier, in his 3rd year as Magpie skipper, leads his team out, followed by his brother Albert. Jack Regan, future Brownlow medalist Marcus Whelan, with Fonts Kine behind him. This was also the great Gordon Coventry's 36th birthday and his last game for Collingwood. His 3 goals brought his league total to 1,299, which has never been equalled, and his total in finals alone to 112, another record. But his effort was not enough to carry the Magpies over the line in this epic encounter. The two teams were level at the last change, but a 5-goal final quarter burst by the Cats took them to their 3rd premiership. This magnificent clash gave footy fans plenty to read about in the evening's newspapers, and equally as much to talk about for years to come. The Magpies were back in the grand final again the following season, opposed to Carlton, chasing its first flag for 23 years. This was played before yet another record crowd, 96,834, which again spilled onto the playing arena and required police control. The match itself was another fierce tactical battle, with Carlton, now captain-coached by ex-South Ruck star Brighton Diggins, establishing a lead in the second quarter, and the Woodsmen pegging the Blues back in the third and final quarters. This persistent effort by Carlton's half-forward flanker Paul Schmidt, number 23, opposed to Magpie defenders Freddie Froud, number 10, and Marcus Boyle, number 5, wins him a free kick. Here, Schmidt takes a strong mark. He scored 2 goals in the grand final, and Carlton were also well served by their other key forwards, Jack Rout and Ken Baxter. Here's a typically strong mark by Baxter, wearing number 4, after a snap over the shoulder by one of Carlton's all-time great forwards, Soapy Valance, playing on a flank in this, his last game. Baxter's left foot dropkick brings up one of his 3 goals for the match. In 1939, the last season before the world was plunged into another war, the Magpies made their 5th consecutive grand final appearance. Their opponents, Melbourne, after missing the 4 in 1938, recovered to top the ladder. Harry Collier again led the Magpies in 1939, his brother Albert, Fonz Kine, all still part of the Woods lineup. Alan LaFontaine, one of Melbourne's all-time champions, captained the side. His deputy, Jack Mueller, rover Percy Beams. Collingwood led early, and with its century goal kicker Ron Todd in top form, looked to have the Redlegs measure. But Melbourne's Rovers were busy and combined well with key forwards Ron Baggett and Norm Smith to keep their team in the game. Here, Melbourne's Harold Ball and Collingwood's Jack Regan fly for a mark, before Smith gathers and hand passes out wide to flanker Les Jones for a running goal, one of his 3 for the game. In the second quarter, Todd was still causing problems for the Redlegs' defence. After another mark, he was felled by Melbourne ruckman Gordon Jones, which resulted in a scrimmage. In another sensation, umpire Coward went down in a pack and had to leave the field with a dislocated elbow. He was replaced by umpire Blackburn. Melbourne bridged the gap after this incident and kicked 11 goals to the Magpies' 4 in the second half. Here's one of them, as Albie Rodder gathers in Norm Smith's floating handball and slips past Jack Regan to score again. Todd, in his final appearance for the Pies, ended up with 6 goals, while Beams and Rodder kicked 4 each for the Redlegs on the way to posting a new grand final record score and notching up the club's first premiership since 1926. This was the start of a successful new era for Melbourne and the end of one for Collingwood, which had featured in so many stirring finals contests over the previous decade. The 1930s had also given us a new range of stars to admire and to be used by promoters of the game as role models for skill development. Beginning in the 30s, a number of films have been produced featuring leading VFL players in action as a means of fostering the code, both in Australia and overseas. Devised by former Collingwood star winger Bruce Andrew for the Australian National Football Council, these films demonstrate the various skills of the game as they were practiced at the time. This is South Melbourne star full-back Ron Hillis, late in his career, demonstrating his drop-kicking skills at the Lake Oval. Tall and reliable, Hillis played with great judgment, and although injury kept him out of the Bloods' 1933 flag win, he played in 4 Victorian teams and was one of South's best in the 1935 grand final team's loss to Collingwood. Hillis was also strong in the air, and his fingertip marking was a delight. Hillis's teammate, Jack Graham, demonstrates the art of the place kick. Graham first played for the state side in 1937, when this film was taken, and was one of the last exponents of the place kick, a beautiful high mark and very clever ruckman who gave South Melbourne sterling service for many years. The stab kick exponent is Billy Libbis, who finished his career with Melbourne in 1935, but played as number 1 rover in Collingwood's grand final sides from 1926 to 1930, which included 4 premierships. And this is legendary South full forward Bob Pratt, one of the masters of the soaring torpedo punt, although it is probably as a spectacular high flyer and prolific goal kicker for which he is best remembered. His really magical year was 1934, when he set a new mark of 150 goals, equalled many years later by Hawthorn's Peter Hudson, but never surpassed. In an era of champion full forwards, Collingwood's Jack Regan ranked as the prince of fullbacks. In fact, many good judges regard Regan as the greatest fullback the game has ever seen. Fast, dashing and a long kick, Regan set the standards for all fullbacks until the modern era, when marking from behind became a cardinal sin. His battles and marking duels with Pratt, as mentioned already, were also considered the stuff of legend. But the 1930s featured another player who many would argue was the greatest the game had ever seen. Fitzroy's Hayden Bunton, winner of 3 Brownlow medals and 3 Sandover medals in a glorious career. Even in these set routines, the balance, the poise and class of the player shines through. He appears bigger than one might imagine for a man designated as a rover, and old-timers confirm that he was more the ruck rover size we see today. Bunton showed outstanding ability in his hometown of Albury and was the target of all VFL clubs. Fitzroy signed him, but Bunton had to sit out the entire 1930 season when the league investigated the Maroons for illegal payments for his signature. Eventually, he made his league debut as a 19-year-old and won Brownlows in his first 2 seasons, was runner-up in 1934 and came up with another medal triumph in 1935. Bunton, it was said, averaged 28 kicks a game and also pioneered the use of constructive handball. He crossed to Subiaco in 1938 and won Sandover medals in 1938, 1939 and 1941 before enlisting for Army service. Bunton died in a road accident in South Australia in 1955, just 44 years of age. These earnest displays of balking and hand passing, filmed at Fitzroy's Brunswick Street Oval, were set up by Bruce Andrew with a certain degree of improvisation, using orange peel or pieces of paper to mark the spots where the players needed to execute their moves for the single stationary camera. Andrew also included the flick pass, which had been outlawed in the 1920s in his training film. The relevant law had been changed to force the ball to be struck with the hand, not necessarily a closed fist. While the flick pass was legal, Andrew considered it worth demonstrating. It gained prominence again in the late 1950s and 60s in teams coached by Len Smith and Ted Whitten. These precious film records are a direct result of Bruce Andrews' tireless efforts in developing the code over a number of years. By the end of the decade, though, events on the other side of the globe were conspiring to interrupt such work, or cut short the development of many VFL players. On the weekend of the last round in 1939, Australians had heard on their wirelesses Prime Minister Menzies, seen here presiding over a meeting of the First Defence Council, announced that Britain had declared war on Germany, and that as a result Australia too was at war. Once again, Australia's young men were heading off to fight on foreign soil, and within a few years to defend their own from invasion.
Here we meet once again, you and I. Wish me luck as you wave me goodbye.
The influence of the war, though, was not yet so obvious on the home front, as most Australians tried their best to retain a business-as-usual attitude. If finals attendances were noticeably lower than in previous seasons, it may have had more to do with Melbourne's unseasonal weather. The preliminary final was played out with a last-term rainstorm, and Melbourne's battling victory over Essendon gave the Redlegs the chance to win back-to-back flags. The grand final was also played on sodden ground, made worse by another heavy downpour as the game began. None of this seemed to hinder the Redlegs, who led Richmond by 45 points at half-time. Melbourne's full-forward ace Norm Smith, number 4, played shoulder-to-shoulder with Richmond's George Smeaton, but still bagged 7 goals. Here's a clever snap for one of them.
Can't tell you who'll win just yet. Won't be able to read their bumps till after the game. Sometimes they kick goals. Sometimes they serve them scramble.
In this passage, Richmond's match winner, Jack Dyer, gets a clearing kick away in his usual robust fashion.
And Richmond away with a chain of passes round the wing.
This chain of passes around the members' wing looked promising for the Tigers, but they were never really in the hunt in the second half and lost by 39 points.
Goal to Richmond.
One of the keys for Melbourne was Jack O'Keefe, number 29. His effective containing role on Dyer was a major factor in the Redlegs' victory.
Now settling down like the team of champions they are. They handle the heavy.
Number 11 for Melbourne, who also features in this passage, is Harold Ball, a ruckman who played in both the 1939 and 40 premiership teams, but, like winger Sid Anderson and rover Ron Barassi Sr., who also represented the Redlegs in this team, was killed in action. As fellow rover Percy Beams recalls,
our numbers in enlistments would have been far greater than any other league club. Sid Anderson was the first of the tall wingmen. He'd be about 6'1", very, very fast, very clever.
This convincing grand final win would be the last appearance of Anderson, Ball and Barassi in the red and blue.
The deeds of these flyers stimulated the war loan drive. Penny for a plane stamps raised valuable pounds.
Other players made news off the field as well, while even youngsters supported the war loan drive by purchasing penny for a plane stamps. They were stimulated by the exploits of RAAF pilots like Bluey Truscott, Melbourne's solidly built redhead who was allowed to lead the team while home on leave.
He wasn't fit, grossly overweight, and I admired Dyer for that occasion because Dyer said to me, he said, well, as long as Bluey doesn't go down on the forward line, he said, we won't touch him. He can do as he like and get a few kicks.
Bluey was no star on the field, but his heroic war deeds and tragic death on a reconnaissance flight turned him into a legend.
Australians and Americans as they watched this cavalcade of armour parading through Melbourne.
The influence of the war on VFL competition over the next 3 years was considerable. Clubs struggled to field teams, attendances plummeted, travel restrictions forced Geelong to withdraw entirely, the Brownlow medal and all interstate games were suspended and the season shortened. To make matters worse, several VFL grounds were taken over for use as service camps or depots, including the MCG. Princes Park was the finals venue in 1942 and 1943, with Essendon and Richmond contesting grand finals in both years. The Dons, under captain coach Dick Reynolds, won comfortably in 1942, but the Tigers, led by their captain coach Jack Dyer, turned the tables the following year. Both teams posed for photographs prior to the match, the Dons wearing the white shorts. They had defeated Richmond in the second semi-final, repeating the pattern of the previous year in which the top side, after losing, bounced back to take the flag. Dyer won the toss for the Tigers before both teams lined up in the centre for the national anthem. Dyer also wins the knockout at the opening bounce, but is bowled over by Essendon ruckman Hugh Tawney, number 20, in the process. In a seesawing struggle, the Tigers went on to survive a torrid last quarter in the first grand final, to be decided by less than a goal since 1921. The Junction Oval was the venue for the 1944 final series. Richmond, appearing in its sixth consecutive series, had finished the regular season on top, but faced worthy opposition from Fitzroy in the second semi and grand finals. Unlike the cold and damp 1940 grand final, this one was played in front of 43,000 people in the hottest temperature on record, 86 degrees Fahrenheit in the shade. The opening bounce by umpire Hawkins gave Fitzroy's top ruckman, number 31, Bert Clay, the chance to tap the ball clear. This game was a close, scrambling affair, with neither side able to make a decisive break. This snap by number 29, Richmond centre-half forward Brian Randall, brings up a goal, but after Fitzroy nosed in front in the second quarter, the Tigers were always playing catch-up football. This is Leo Maguire, number 31, Richmond centre-half back, getting a kick away. Another Fitzroy forward move and a long run out of defence by tough Tiger defender Max Oppie, showing something of the great pace gained from his pro running days. This was the last time both grand final teams were led by playing coaches. Fitzroy's Fred Hewson, who played one of his many fine games at full-back, opposed for a time to his opposite number, Jack Dyer, who had kicked 9 goals the previous week but was well held in the grand final. Fitzroy held out the Tigers after half-time to win by 15 points, its first premiership for 22 years and its last grand final appearance since. 4 new teams comprised the Final Four in 1945. The grand final was played at Princes Park and 62,986 fans crammed into the old ground. This was the infamous bloodbath between Carlton and South Melbourne.
You can't have him, lady. He's wanted on the field.
One of the protagonists, rugged Carlton captain Bob Chitty.
Rain falls in the second half. Soon after it commences, South take the lead. But from then on, Carlton forges ahead.
At the opening bounce, in the foreground, number 23 for South, is 17-year-old Ron Clegg, a future champion and Brownlow medalist. Opposite Clegg is another future Brownlow medalist, Carlton's number 23, Bert Deacon.
Must be a couple of Sydney blokes. South drive desperately, but can't drive their attacks home. Carlton keep on adding points, and the 1945 pennant looks...
Marking strongly in this passage is wingman Herb Turner, number 7 for the Blues. His opponent, number 22 for South, is Ted Whitfield, who was suspended for the whole of the following season for his part in numerous incidents. Whitfield even ran up the field with his jumper over his head to avoid having his number taken, a tactic that didn't work. Turner's pass is marked by Blues number 14 Rod McLean, whose son Ricky also played for Carlton. McLean's kick to full forward is contested by the Blues' Ken Baxter, number 21, and South fullback Jim Cleary, number 20. Cleary gets the ball away under pressure from Carlton number 1 Ken Hands, then in his first season with the Blues. Hands was later knocked out, precipitating a near riot, although this newsreel record failed to capture any of the bitter clashes or open violence which occurred during the course of the match. Here, South Ruck rover Jack Dempsey wins the tap. The ball ends up with ruckman Jack Graham, who hand passes to Herb Matthews, who kicks further downfield. Cleary punches the ball away from Carlton ruckman Ron Savage, another to be reported in this game. The ball is gathered by the Blues' number 16, Jim Mooring, who puts it through for full points. Carlton went on to win the grand final by 28 points. The following Tuesday, no fewer than 10 players fronted the tribunal, 7 receiving hefty suspensions. It was a game destined to live long in the memories of those who played in it or witnessed it. But while Princes Park was a battlefield in September 1945, the conflict to the north of Australia's shores had finally come to an end. The relief and elation felt by Melburnians on hearing of the peace declaration bubbled over into spontaneous, joyous celebration, outstripping the jubilation expressed by even the most partisan football supporters after a grand final victory. With the background of war at last out of the way, footy fans could look forward to a brand new era. 19 home and away games for the first time, the emergence of an under-19 grade competition, the reinstatement of the Brownlow medal. This man had already won 3 before the war. The beginning of a golden period for the Bombers. And for other teams as well. New coaches, the introduction of a second reserve player, the 20th man, and new stars. Most importantly, finals football reverted to its rightful home, the MCG, after it was vacated by the Army in 1946. Once more, the fans returned in huge numbers to see their beloved teams in action. All for less than 5 bob. In the stands, an air of expectancy before the arrival of the teams onto the arena. These priceless film records provide an insight into how far the game, and the technology which recorded it, had developed over half a century. Their survival is a reminder of the important role film has played in capturing and preserving so many different aspects of our great game over this period. It is a tribute to all the nameless camera operators who have diligently applied their own skills to marking time.
It's a grand game, our Aussie game, the best game of all. Up they go, they're flying so high. Watch the kicking straight as the die. It is football at its wonderful best, the fastest game of all. Full of action, packed with thrill, with every move of marvelous skill. It's a grand game, our national game, Australia's own football. It's played up north at Darwin, down south in Hobart too. In fact, it's played north, south and east and west. Created by Australians from every point of view. It's football, and it's played with vim and zest. It's a grand game, our Aussie game, the best game of all. Up they go there, flying so high. Watch that kicking, straight as a die. It is football at its wonderful best, the fastest game of all. Full of action, packed with thrill, with every move of marvelous skill. It's a grand game, our national game, Australia's own.